Welcome back, weary traveler. If you're looking for a calm departure from the typical daily overload, then have a soft seat in my library. I've curated a cozy cluster of old scrolls from my archive to rest your mind and soothe your ears. For sleep, for study, or for ambient background play. Pour yourself a warm cup of something soothing and settle in. I am the professor. You're in my dark academia. It is December 1065. Tranquil England, preparing to celebrate the birth of Christ, was unaware it would soon also witness the death of its king. Edward, the Confessor, lay dying. For 2 weeks they feasted, unaware of the storm creeping across the sea. In 1 year, foreigners would begin invading the land, deposing the lords, replacing the language, and altering the very English geography. But let's freeze frame this image for a moment. Let's pause everything before this storm arrives, before William and his Norman conquest transformed the Anglo-Saxons into the English. I am Professor Dark Academia. This is life in 1066. England in 1066 was a land of plenty. Old men with manes and whiskers silvered by time recounted tales of the marauding Northmen that once ravaged their homeland, sacking their monasteries and placing their own bloodthirsty warlords on English thrones. Yet for 2 generations, the Anglo-Saxon world had enjoyed an idyllic peace, a Pax Anglia, a respite from the turmoil of the past. This tranquility had nurtured prosperity, allowing taxation to dwindle to a mere trickle compared to the errors of war chests and Danelaw. The people of England, basking in this newfound prosperity, had a chance to live lives of greater comfort and abundance than their forebears. The land, once scarred by the ravages of war, was now lush and verdant. Crops swayed in the gentle breeze, their full heads heavy with promise. Harvests were plentiful, ensuring the bellies of children would remain full and their spirits high. It was a time of contentment, a golden age in which the English people could look to the future with hope and optimism. To the modern English person accustomed to the bustling metropolis of London and Manchester, or the urban sprawl that riddles the landscape, the scale of life in pre-Norman England is astonishingly adorable. The pop density was a fraction of what it is today, with 1 person for every 50 to 60 or so inhabitants of modern England. Villages and settlements were scattered sparsely across the landscape, often separated by vast tracts of wild forest and barren countryside. London, the largest city in the realm, boasted a population of between 12 and 15,000 residents, a modest number by today's standards, but it was an exceptional concentrate of people back then. York, the second largest city, lagged behind with perhaps 8,000 inhabitants. These inhabitants were by far the exception to the rule. 19 out of every 20 Anglo-Saxons identified as villagers. Their lives were deeply intertwined with the rhythms of the land, revolving around farming, herding, and the nurturing of close-knit communities. Government, by any modern standard, was virtually non-existent at the local level. Villages were largely self-sufficient and governed by local customs and traditions, with the golden rule and the honor system held high in respect. Peashall, our fictional little village here, is nestled amidst the rolling hills of Shropshire along the Welsh marches and sheltered by a vast ancient forest. Though we've traveled back 1,000 years, Peashall is already ancient, having witnessed centuries of human activity, with 200 to 300 acres of the surrounding woodland cleared over several generations. Nobody is in a rush to make a fortune. The goal is to use resources as necessary, only slowly chipping away at nature's provisions. Within this verdant enclave, a diverse community of individuals live and work. There are 16 households in total, each headed by a male patriarch. 6 of these families are cottagers, occupying the smallest and least desirable dwellings. 9 households are led by villeins, the backbone of the village's labor force. And presiding over them all is the Thane, the lord of the manor, a man of considerable wealth and influence. Let us call him Ethelric, a name that echoes the Anglo-Saxon traditions of the time. The backbone of English society in the 11th century was formed by these humble villeins. Don't let this word fool you. These are not the villains thwarting the plans of superheroes and Disney princesses. They weren't evil, they were just medieval. The lads were lower key than low key. Villeins were men whose name, derived from the Latin villanus, meaning farm laborer, reflected their servile status. They were the most numerous heads of families, their lives inextricably linked to the soil they churned. A villein's primary obligation was to provide the Thane with a yearly bargain of goods or service, anything from agricultural produce to livestock. In addition, they were expected to repay any loans or debts incurred, such as borrowed oxen or sheep. England in 1066 was a vast and isolated land. Even King Edward, the ruler of the realm, had never ventured to its northernmost reaches. Villages scattered across the countryside felt a world away from the bustling court in London. News traveled slowly, carried by weary peddlers, whispered by landlords, or spread through the grapevine of village gossip. Monks, diligently chronicling events in their monasteries, were the historians of the age, scribbling passages unintelligible to the average English person, for whom literacy rates were, 1, 2. Life moved at a different pace. Within their own small world, villagers knew every face, every tree, every creature. Everyone relied on one another for support, and while they couldn't vote, they stood as the ground floor for English administration. In the good old days, a nation was not defined by any map, but by a people who shared customs and a common language. By the year 1066, the social system of England was a simple yet elaborate arrangement, defined by stark contrasts of privilege and obligation. At the top were the earldoms, vast territories ruled by the powerful earls. These earldoms were further subdivided into shires, overseen by shire reeves, aka sheriffs, such as the Sheriff of Nottingham, and then into hundreds, administrative districts that ideally encompassed 100 hides of land, a unit of measurement used to assess taxable property. While the king and his court stood at the forefront of national politics, their power derived from the witan. The witan were the most distinguished men in the kingdom. When they met together, they convened the Witenagemot. It might be in the hall of an earl's manor, humble by our standards but grand in its day. The air thick with aromas of wood fire, roasting meats, and spilled mead. Around a long oak table gathered earls with fierce mustaches bristling, bishops in flowing robes, and wise old thanes hunched over. They debated laws, planned wars, and held the fate of Saxon England in their hands. Before the Normans concreted absolute primogeniture, the witan's word sealed the throne, not any birthright. A glimpse of democracy, albeit by privileged medieval standards, emerged as they elected Harold Godwinson to replace the dead confessor, a decision that doomed the son of Godwin and forever altered English destiny. The concept of church and state separation was not yet even a whispered myth in these times. While the shires were glued tight by the land-rich earls, it was the bishops who greatly influenced local politics, law, and order. Bishops, as both spiritual leaders and major landowners, exerted significant influence on local politics, law, and order within their dioceses. The medieval Catholic Church was essentially the United Nations of 11th century Europe. Church relations was synonymous with international relations. These men of power tarried where power was needed. While the Thane interacted regularly with lowly villains in a tiny village such as Peashall, a man might live his entire life without ever setting eyes on an earl. The villagers of Peashall looked forward to time for church. It was the closest thing to a cinema they knew. Their meek faith provided a sturdy basement for their society, and their church was likewise simple. These were not yet the days of grand cathedrals with stained glass windows. The medievals gathered as communities in simple stone buildings. Some resembled modern churches with naves, transepts, and chancels, many of which were left by the Romans. Others weren't more than glorified stone barns. Smaller villages might only have a timber structure or even somebody's home. Though plagued by drought, famine, and no surprise, plague, their humble religion offered solace. Feasts were abundant. They had all their saints' days as handed by the church, as well as the old pagan holidays were given a Christian gloss, such as Christmas, Easter, and May Day with its festive maypole.
They brewed vast quantity of ale and drink accordingly, and it was rarely frowned upon.
Illness and death may have been right around the corner, but life was here and now, and lived.
A glimpse into the labor of the land is offered by a learned man of the 11th century who penned a Latin treatise on estate management called, here we go, rectitude, rectitudines, rectitudine. A glimpse into the labor of the land is offered by a learned man of the 11th century who penned a Latin treatise on estate management called Rectitudine Singularum Personarum.
Peashall, like much of England, was a patchwork of small fields, each a verdant square hemmed in by hedges and copses of trees. Farming was a communal endeavor, with the land divided into long, narrow strips, 10 times longer than they were wide. This was the open field system, a testament to the shared effort that sustained the village. According to the Domesday Book, a comprehensive survey of England conducted in 1086, villains were often granted cottages and up to 5 acres of land by their thanes. These modest holdings provided them with a degree of independence and security. In return for these benefits, villains were required to work for their lord for 1 to 3 days each week, with additional labor demanded during harvest time. While slavery did exist, it was typically reserved as a punishment, a harsh alternative to prolonged imprisonment. You could not be born into it. Staple crops included wheat, rye, oats, and barley. More exotic vegetables such as cabbage, leeks, onion, and turnip were common to the area ever since the Romans introduced them to the British Isles. The most common fruits grown were apples and pears, with cherries available, though less common. The Romans also introduced walnuts and grapes, as well as game animals such as rabbit and pheasant. Peashall could have boasted orchards bursting with apples perfect for cider, but perhaps too cold for many crops beyond oats and barley. Sugar had not yet been discovered by any Englishman, and the most popular sweetener available was honey. Anything resembling a tomato or potato would not be known for more than 400 years.
What's taters, precious? What's taters, eh?
8 centuries before the Football League's formation, medieval England already knew football, though likely a far cry from the modern game. Kicking and probably some throwing were involved, but the rules and style remain largely a mystery. Early cricket, too, existed in some form, with evidence of swinging bats and small balls. Indoor recreation included draughts, checkers, and to the more clever medievals, chess. To them, the bishops and knights weren't merely pieces on a board, they were reflections of contemporary society. Hunting and fishing, both sport and necessity, provided sustenance. Though the rivers, streams, and lakes were heavily polluted with sewage, they were teeming with fish, and the average Peashall villager knew not the risks. While hare and pheasant were popular game, deer hunting was a capital crime. Venison belonged solely to the king. From dawn till dusk, the villagers of Peashall lived a life dictated by the land and the changing seasons. Days were filled with the backbreaking labor of the fields, tending crops and livestock, the rhythms marked by the rising and setting sun. Yet amidst the toil, time was found for leisure. Evenings brought respite, perhaps shared stories around a fire, or the simple pleasure of a shared meal. Life in Peashall was a mosaic of labor, community, and the small joys that punctuated the daily grind. But this familiar world, with its ancient customs and traditions, was about to face a challenge unlike any it had ever known.
For my source, I use David Haworth's 1066, The Year of the Conquest, published in 1978. But of course, he wasn't present for that year, 1066, 1978. Stay with me, stay focused. So drew from 20 contemporary sources written between 1050 and 1245, including the previously mentioned Rectitudines, the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, and the Doomsday Book. That's the final take. But Haworth's warm storytelling reads much better than these three archaic carpet remnants. So I went ahead and cut out the middleman. And so we leave Peashall in the autumn of 1066, a microcosm of English culture in an ancient time ready to be transformed and transfixed completely by marauding Northmen from the south.
Its villagers, bound by tradition and the rhythms of the land, lived in a world of plenty, yet also one of limited horizons. Their lives, centered around the church, the thane, and the daily grind of agricultural labor, were a testament to the enduring power of community and the cyclical nature of existence. They knew not that the peace they enjoyed, this Pax Anglia, was about to be shattered. The storm clouds were gathering across the channel, carrying with them not just a new king, but a new era and way of life. The Norman conquest would soon sweep across the land, irrevocably altering the language, the social structures, and the very destiny of England.
The world of Peashall, with its familiar faces and ancient customs, would be transformed, becoming a part of the rich tapestry of English history, a reminder of the Anglo-Saxon world that once was, and a world that was about to be. The year 1066 stands as a pivotal point, a dividing line between two distinct chapters in the story of England, a story that continues to resonate even today. I have been the Professor. You're always welcome in my neck of the woods.
Those familiar with Roman, British, and Scottish history are well aware of Hadrian's Wall, the 117-kilometer stretch of fortifications spanning English countryside from the mouth of the River Tyne in the east to the Solway Firth in the Irish Sea to the west. The wall was designed to strengthen the border of pure Roman imperial lands south of the wall to wilder areas lacking former Roman control in the north. It was garrisoned by small forts known as mile castles, constructed at each Roman mile intersecting the wall, hence the name. Construction began in 122 CE during the reign of Emperor Hadrian, and the wall would serve its intended purpose off and on well into the 5th century. While scholars have learned much about the construct through archaeology and written accounts, few of the more fascinating aspects of the wall have failed to enter public conscience. I'm Johnny from Mortar and Ivy, and these are 9 facts you did not know about Hadrian's Wall. Number 9. It does not, nor has ever, marked the England-Scotland border. It is a common misbelief that the border separating England and Scotland is based on the array of Hadrian's Wall, or at least one time was. But in fact, the famous landmark has never in British history marked the dividing line between the two countries, not even during Roman times. It is true the wall roughly mirrors the border to its north, and while some sections of the wall are within 1 mile of the dividing line, other sections are as many as 70 miles away. Number 8. Emperor Hadrian personally oversaw construction. Many monuments of ancient Rome are typically named for the emperor reigning during their construction, such as Hadrian's Wall. Except Hadrian's Wall is an exception because unlike most of these monuments, such as the Antonine Wall to the north, this wall's construction was actually overseen by Emperor Hadrian himself. In fact, Hadrian was considered a competent architect and engineer during his day and offered his personal input to the planning of the project. Number 7. It was not called Hadrian's Wall. Were Donald Trump to fulfill his promise and build a wall Were Donald Trump to fulfill his promise and build a wall bordering Mexico and the US, it would probably refer to as Trump's Wall and not Donald's Wall, because Donald is a very common male name, and many innocent Donalds might get caught in a backlash, as it is with Hadrian's Wall. Historians refer to it as such, but this is a later development. Hadrian was a very common Roman surname, and to name the wall as such would be fairly redundant and slightly confusing. Rather, it was probably called Aelius's Wall, or more likely, Valum Aelium, Aelius being one of Emperor Hadrian's more recognized first names during his lifetime. Number 6. Much of it was turf. While visions of Hadrian's Wall inspire a romantic stone edifice stretching miles across northern English countryside, much of it wasn't actually stone. During the wall's first iteration under Emperor Hadrian, approximately 1/3 of the build comprised earth and turf with simple wood and stone fortifications. Not exactly intimidating to a bloodthirsty Pictish lord hell-bent on destruction, but oh well, whatever floats your wall. Number 5. It was already there, kind of. Placement of the defensive wall was not by any means spontaneous. Rather, it was built along a pre-existing geological marker, an igneous intrusion of dolerite rock stretching much of the length from North Sea to Irish Sea. Using this pre-existing geological formation made construction and defense of the wall significantly easier, cheaper, and more effective. I find it so adorable when those ruddy Romans use their noggins. Number 4. It inspired George R.R. Martin's Song of Ice and Fire. Any casual fan of either Roman history or Game of Thrones must surely know the parallels between the wall that separates the north of Westeros and the realms of wildlings and Hadrian's Wall. This is due, of course, to author Martin's inspiration of his wall by the historical construct, though Martin's wall is about 200 times the size of Hadrian's Wall and made from solid ice. Poetic license, I guess. The similarities do not end with the physical wall. Just like Martin's Night's Watch, Roman soldiers had to follow strict rules such as taking no wives while stationed, though this rule did not last very long, for obvious reasons. Number 3. It was all built at once. The adage goes, Rome was not built in a day, nor was Hadrian's Wall for that matter, though it was built rather peculiarly. The average layperson might envision the wall's construction beginning at one end and concluding at the opposite end. Not the case. Rather, construction on Hadrian's Wall began mostly concurrently across its expanse, and completed 6 years later. Number 2. It was, at first, short-lived. After construction completed, the wall was only used for about 12 years before the Roman Empire under Hadrian's successor Antoninus Pius grew more ambitious and constructed the Antonine Wall further north, spanning modern-day Scotland from the Firth of Forth in the east to the Firth of Clyde in the west. Easily transported objects such as doors and gates were carted north for use in the new wall, and the Hadrian's Wall ditch was paved in places to allow for freer movement. Unlike Hadrian's Wall, Emperor Pius never visited Britain, allowing Roman governor of Britain Quintus Lullius Urbicus to oversee construction in his stead. And unlike Hadrian's Wall, the Antonine Wall was shorter, cheaper, and almost completely composed of wood, sod, and earth. Despite these shortcomings, the new wall took twice the length of time to build and was only used for half the duration of Hadrian's counterpart. After an upheaval of native militant behaviors, the Antonine Wall was likewise abandoned, and Hadrian's Wall was resettled, refurbished, and this time completely in stone. Scholars refer to this iteration of the construct as the Severan Wall, after another later emperor, Septimius Severus. There were many Romans and Britons living at the time that witnessed the wall's construction, abandonment, and eventual reconstruction, most likely shaking their heads in disapproving folly. And finally, number 1, it became a major British highway. Not in the sense of a heavily used high-speed motorway, but still a very popular B-road. By the early 18th century, the Hadrian's Wall was in serious disrepair, and though many of the stones had since been carted off for other English building projects, still many had remained intact. That was until 1746, when General George Wade ordered the construction of a military road stretching 31 miles or 50 kilometers directly on the wall's foundation and using the wall's very stones. General Wade felt hurried to construct the road to escort troops in a timely manner following several Jacobite insurrections in the north. It is considered to date the number 1 most destructive act ever committed to the landmark. As time grew, as did the road, and Wade's military road, as it is known,
not to be confused with the Roman-built military way to its south, eventually became part of the B6318 that stretches from Hedon on the Wall in the east to Greenhead to the west. Despite this blatant disregard for a national object of affection, much more of the wall was preserved, thanks in part to one John Clayton, and can be visited and cherished today. So who knew a wall could be so interesting? I wonder if the building of the wall was one of Hadrian's major political moves to prevent the illegal immigration wave of native Caledonians. Just forget I said that. Just scratch that, etc.
I've been Johnny. You're always welcome in my neck of the woods.
Have you ever wondered how pumpkin spice flavoring became the de facto flavor of fall? Yeah, me neither. I mean, pumpkin is not the only vegetable or fruit that matures during the autumn season. There are plenty of other good candidates, such as apples and apple cider, cranberries, turkey gravy. So why among all these candidates is pumpkin the number one go-to? Well, let's discuss it, whether you want me to or not. I'm Johnny from Mortar & Ivy, and this is the history of pumpkin spice. Pumpkin spice refers to the blending of 3 traditional dessert spices: cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves, with the occasional addition of ginger and/or actual pumpkin flavoring. Starbucks created the PSL, as it is affectionately called, in the fall of 2003 as a means to replicate the success of holiday favorites the eggnog latte and the peppermint mocha. It was released the following year, to much acclaim. What started as a fun, tasty autumn treat spilled out of control and became a full-fledged cultural mainstay of the season, practically a way of life, and has since become a tongue-in-cheek synonym with suburban white girl culture, commonly referred to as, well, I'm sure you've heard it. Cinnamon, synonym. Let's say that 10 times fast. No. Many other coffee franchises have created similar drinks before and since the Seattle-based Giants' introduction of the fall drink. Fun fact, Starbucks didn't actually include pumpkin as an ingredient to the beverage until 2015. But the story goes back further, much further. In fact, as many as 3,500 years earlier, or at least in part. Researchers have found pottery shards in Indonesia that contain residual amounts of nutmeg, one of the leading spices in pumpkin spice. This is 2,000 years earlier than originally thought. Nutmeg and other spices became invaluable commodities throughout the centuries since then, lending to the spice trade that exploded in medieval Asia, the Middle East, Europe, and North Africa. Silk Road, more like Spice Road. A region of Indonesia these nutmeg-dusted ceramic bits were discovered is known as the Banda Islands, which in the 1300s CE would become known as part of the Spice Islands for some several hundred years. Said University of Toronto economics professor emeritus John Monroe, at one point in the 1300s, when tariffs were at their highest, a pound of nutmeg in Europe cost 7 fattened oxen and was a more valuable commodity than gold. And you thought $5 for a hot cup was unreasonable. Cinnamon has been in use even longer than nutmeg, known to have been popular in ancient Egypt some 4,000 plus years ago. Cinnamon became an especially popular condiment in classic Rome, where before the advent of nutmeg or pumpkins in Europe was used to season oysters. Now try putting that in a latte. I mean, I try it. I have adventurous tastes. The word pumpkin originates from the Greek word pipon, meaning large melon. This became pompon via the French, pompion thanks to the British, and then finally pumpkin by the early American colonists. The Irish and Scottish tradition of jack-o'-lanterns had originally involved turnips, onions, and/or other roundish root vegetables. 19th century Americans, some possibly of Scots or Irish or Scots-Irish stock, adapted the tradition to the winter gourd native to the Americas. While it is not the only fruit or vegetable that matures come early autumn, the pumpkin and its accompanying spices have become synonymous with the season, thanks in part to its role in early American agriculture and the very popular pumpkin pie place on the Thanksgiving holiday table. Very popular pumpkin pie place.
Nowadays, pumpkin spice, and pumpkin pie flavored, scented, themed products explode in number every fall. Products range from Glade plugins to even pumpkin spice candy corn and Cheerios. Trader Joe's stocks more than 70 pumpkin-y products each fall, with that number rising steadily. His beard is leaves, his hair ivy. He rings in the spring with a twinkle and a bow, and whispers life into withered vines. He is the shepherd of the forest and of the garden, watching over all of us and helping us grow, outside and within. Maybe you too, staring out through the branches, have seen his face. If not, you may be in luck, because today we go looking for him. I'm Johnny the Folklore Guy, and I'm searching for the Green Man.
Green Man is saving your life right now, bro. Just go with the flow.
No, not that Green Man.
Cut. We can't make that joke. That joke's already been made. Scarlet Ravenswood made that joke on her channel. Make a different joke.
Oh, I'm sure they won't mind if we borrow that joke. After all, I think everybody's made that connection between those two very different green men. No, we will be talking about the traditional Green Man, the original Green Man. He who brings in the spring. For those who don't know, the Green Man is an ancient motif that resounds throughout many old cultures, arts, and traditions. And unlike other pagan and folk traditions, these varieties likely grew independently or organically apart from each other, much like depictions of demons or sea monsters or whatever this is. And despite this diverse myriad of green men throughout the world in every culture, we'll be focusing on the British and Celtic tradition of the folk deity. Now, as it is Folktober and the beginning of autumn and the changing of the seasons and the color of the leaves, it might be a strange decision to do a video on the Green Man. But after all, I suppose it's an appropriate starting off point as our videos grow darker and gloomier and grayer and oranger throughout the month. Now let's dive right in with the origins. Green Man references date as far back as the 2nd century CE, and from there they include sculpture reliefs from 5th century French monasteries, 6th century Roman mosaics, and 11th century Templar churches in Jerusalem. Variations on the Green Man theme appear more often from the Renaissance onward, with perhaps half of all depictions dating from around the latter half of the 19th century. This is when ancient folk aesthetics were en vogue during the Gothic revival and Romanticism movements, appearing in everything from statuary to manuscripts, book plates, stained glass, and sculpture reliefs. And to this day, by far the most popular medium to find these Green Man motifs is in sculptures, typically on buildings. And that leads us into our next category. Despite its pagan symbolism, the Green Man is used more often as a Christian religious device, often placed in and on churches alongside biblical figures, the saints, and gargoyles gargling. Once again, who wrote this?
And once again, you wrote this.
Gargoyles gurgling rainwater. Nailed it. Whole books and travel guides are written on the Green Man and how and where to spot these illustrious figures in and around churches and little towns throughout Great Britain, of which you'll find a list in the description and toward the end of this video. Other places Green Man can be spotted extend beyond religious sites and include secular locations such as homes and pubs, gravestones and cemeteries, government buildings, and most commonly, your Nana Gertrude's back garden. She picks them up at car boot sales. They're made of tempered aluminum. They're covered in bird feces. Man is said to draw archetypal parallels with many other historical green mythological figures, both inspired by and an inspiration to the Green Man. The Green Man is said to draw inspiration in part to the Egyptian god Osiris, who is often connected with rebirth and regeneration, and likewise often depicted with a green face. Similar green figures connected with spring and rebirth include the Greek faun god Pan, and the Greco-Roman Dionysus or Bacchus, the Celtic Cernunnos, Odin from Norse mythology, and the Welsh Blodeuwedd. Some scholars consider these figures as possible precursors to the Green Man, or may have in part inspired him or even her in some cases. To some degree, parallels are drawn to Jesus as well. Similarly, this prototypical Green Man concept may have further inspired similar green characters, such as the Green Knight from Arthurian legend, Robin Hood, and even Father Christmas, especially earlier versions that draw some inspiration from Odin as well. The constants remain life, rebirth, and reward of bountiful plenty. Plentiful bounty? Feasts and whatnot. These old images of the Green Man range in many matters and compositions from just the head to full body. Primarily speaking, facial reliefs are the most common, and they can be divided into three primary types. The quintessential Green Man depicts a placid face, whose hair and facial hair comprises leaves and vines. This we refer to as the foliate head. The second most common type is the disgorging head, whereby the foliage emits from the Green Man's mouth, as if he is regurgitating the leaves and extra bits. Somebody get this man a refund on his salad. A third popular type is interestingly known as the bloodsucker head, and is a variation on the disgorging variety, except for instead of his mouth, the foliage emits from all facial orifices, including the tear ducts, the ears, and the nostrils. And in full-bodied versions, other places. There's also a fourth variety who peddles canned vegetables, but we have not the time to discuss him today. While the Green Man may not be as household in fame as, say, the Batman, his relevance has not subsided one bit. Green Man figures can be spotted throughout pop culture. In film and television with the likes of the classic Wicker Man movie, Hellier, The Odd Life of Timothy Green, and The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. In books of fantasy and supernatural from authors such as Kenneth Grahame, J.R.R. Tolkien, Robert Jordan, and Stephen Fry. And in music, most famously the song Jack in the Green by Jethro Tull, but more personally important to me, the song Green Man by Typo Negative from their album October Rust, which first introduced me to the legend. Artists produce Green Man-inspired works more often now than in the previous 6 centuries combined. And you'll find plenty of cosplayers donning foliated masks and outfits at Renaissance fairs and music festivals throughout the world. Though a figure of folklore from centuries past, the Green Man's presence in our periphery today and tomorrow proves that his abilities for rebirth and rejuvenation are just as powerful now as ever. So bear in mind, the next time you stroll among the trees and the vines, that you are not alone, and no matter how stagnant or dead you feel inside, growth and rebirth awaits you just around the bend. I've been Johnny, wishing you a happy springtime from my neck of the woods. I hadn't dreamt there was a place like the Dales. I hadn't thought it possible that I could spend all my days in an clean blown land, or even in the driving rain of winter. I could sniff the air and find the freshness of grown things hidden somewhere in the cool clasp of winter. there's a timelessness of Herriot's writing that could have been written any time between 1910 and 2010. And by excluding the odd mention of an automobile or two, even older still, reading his excerpts is like stepping back 100 years, where progress was received with a little welcome. My route consisted now of driving from farm to farm across the roof of England, with the growing conviction that I was a privileged person. As I drove west across the plain of York, I began to catch the glimpses over the edge tops of the long spire of the Pennines lifting into the morning sky, and when the edges gave way to the clean limestone walls, I got the feeling I was at, of the world opening out and shackles falling away. James Herriot was a traveling expert in veterinary sciences who wrote his best-selling and humorous tales of Yorkshire, its simple people, and their seemingly admirable, backward, and antiquated remedies for their livestock. This is my review of his book, James Herriot's Yorkshire Revisited. The book compiles snippets from his previous works and was published posthumously. Photographs by Derry Brabs are an especial delight, capturing the Yorkshire countryside in all its moods, seasons, and times of day, wide shots and close-ups, its character delicately captured in stunning color prints, my scans of which for this video do little justice to their art. The silence and emptiness of the moors filled me utterly. Those were the days when I was most grateful I was in country practice. The shirt-sleeved days when the bleak menace of the bald heights melted into friendliness, when I felt at one with all the airy life and growth about me, and was glad that I'd become what I never thought I would be, a doctor of farm animals. We cannot kid ourselves in admitting that despite its beauty in so many ways, this book is coffee table fare. It's like Herriot's greatest hits album, except no verse, only the choruses to many a song. There's no meat in the meal, only the condiments and perhaps the table's centerpiece. You see his brushstrokes, but not the full picture he painted, and those, I suppose, should be enough analogies to convey what I mean. Excerpts from his previous works are taken without context. As this is a Mortar and Ivy book review, it is time I weigh the book's worth to our established criteria. For readability, I offer this book a level of 4 on a scale of 5. James Herriot is a remarkable writer who, though verbose, is not too word-heavy. The book is quite literary and dignified, but not snobbishly so. Anyone can read it, but it's not impossible to put down either. For interest in the topic, I award this book a 5. When reviewing books, I believe it most important to ask whether or not an author can inspire interest in a topic the reader might not otherwise be invested in. And Herriot nails this factor down. Before picking up this book, or even knowing who Herriot was, I had no prior knowledge or interest in farming, husbandry, or veterinary sciences in the Yorkshire countryside. That's changed a bit. Now I wish to know more. For interest in the topic, this book receives a 5. For character development, I award the book a 2.5. We are introduced to many colorful characters throughout the book, and this is what perhaps suffers most in formatting the book the way it is. As it is a collection of excerpts without context, we are deficit to what many consider Herriot's golden brushstroke, portraying the people of Yorkshire. The farmers, the villagers, the odd drunk or lunatic. There's not enough here. There's little story and fewer developments. The dialogue is insular, and befuddlingly so. For writing ability, the book also gets a 5. While very readable, though not the most readable, Yorkshire Revisited contains some very good writing. It almost astounds me writing was not Herriot's first profession. Unless it was. I should have looked into that more, perhaps. Regardless, it's very good. He describes the landscapes of northern England perhaps better than they actually appear. That's some dandy talent. For originality, the book gets a 2. I am firm and confident this book was not Herriot's idea. It was perhaps rather an attempt to pursue more capital using his name. There's no new material here. It is all cut and pasted from previous books. The concept was to pair the bits of material with a landscape photograph it might relate. And though it may have been a notch clever arranging this book using the changing of seasons, the transition of city to country, and or the passing of a single day, only a notch of cleverness does this allow. By arranging such portions by season, as an example, it reads as if Herriot performed a car ride beginning in spring and ending in winter. Only by getting lost and stranded in Siberia is this possible. Not very original, only 2 originality stars are permitted. And of course, our criteria allows certain bonus points to standout features. In this case, photographs. As I remarked earlier, the photography by Derry Brabs is stunning and indeed steals the show from the late Herriot. One might even suspect the images were chosen before their accompanying text. While the written work alone would be perhaps confusing, Brab's colorful additions are what makes this book a worthwhile read. For good or appropriate art or illustrations, I award this book an additional 5 stars. In conclusion, despite its shortfalls as an introductory novelty book highlighting a country vet's varying descriptions of Yorkshire landscapes, the book is indeed a quality read. It requires no heavy thinking. It is designed to allow the reader to disappear within its depictions of places both wild and domestic, both natural yet firmly cultivated by the hands of men. Using the aforementioned reasonings and formulating an opinion, I award this book an averaged 4 stars. If you love English country, dive in. If you expected more stories of curious dogs, lost sheep, and calves born on a moonless midwinter's night, please do refer to Herriot's many other stories.
Among the crowds of men and the dreadness and still air of the towns, I could not really imagine a place where I could be quite alone on the wide green roof of England, and where every breath was filled with the grass scent.
I've been Johnny. You're always welcome in my corner of the moors.
Hello again, stranger. Welcome back. Robert Macfarlane is a Cambridge professor of modern English literature, perhaps better known for his travel works, such as Wild Places, and featured here, The Old Ways. Here I am with a book. And here I am with a book here. The Old Ways travels the old roads of legend and history, both physical trackways as well as age-old sea routes traversed by Vikings and fishermen and other salty sorts. The author presents sensory observations of such colorful locales as England's Icknield Way, the Neolithic trackway made famous by doomed writer Edward Thomas. Perhaps England's oldest road. Spain's El Camino de Santiago, a path followed by Christian pilgrims for hundreds of years. Macfarlane also scathes ancient routes in Palestine, Tibet, and all across the United Kingdom. One common attribute that Macfarlane, his fellow sojourners, and the dusty paths they traverse is religion or faith, or at its most primal core, the belief and seeking in something greater. It is part travelogue, part love letter to the open road, and part homage to Edward Thomas, the poet and writer killed in the Great War more than 100 years ago. To those unimpressed with motorways, tired of rush hour traffic, or simply overwhelmed by the fast pace of modern travel, for that matter, modern anything, Macfarlane's Old Ways will guide you places slower, greater, quieter, older,
perhaps better. I'm enjoying. You're always welcome in my neck of the woods.
Instead of dissecting historical events with a cold, detached microscope, Peter Jackson's Get Back offers a warm hug like a well-loved quilt. This isn't Ken Burns' snooze, this is Ken Yearns. Yearns for a fluffy blanket, cup of tea, Earl Grey anybody, and a taste of honey. Oh, that bell means get the song reference counter up, so settle in. I am the professor, and this is a cozy chat about Peter Jackson's Get Back. That counts, I suppose. Before we proceed, may I request you hit that subscribe button and join me on a journey through the weird side of history and folklore. We'll uncover mind-blowing facts, unearth forgotten legends, and have a laugh along the way. Right. 4. Peter Jackson's 2021 docu-miniseries, The Beatles Get Back, presents a groundbreaking revision of the narrative surrounding the band's final recording sessions. Initially hesitant due to the perceived discord associated with Let It Be, Jackson's access to more than 60 hours of previously unseen footage and 150 hours of audio recordings revealed a reality starkly contrasting the established myth. Drawing inspiration from restoration techniques employed in They Shall Not Grow Old, Jackson embarked on a near 4-year editing odyssey, collaborating with surviving Beatles, their widows, and music supervisor Giles Martin, the son of famed Beatles producer George Martin. Not that George Martin, a better one. Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr welcomed the project as an opportunity to rectify the helter-skelter portrayed in the original 1970 Let It Be film, highlighting the joy and camaraderie evident in the newly discovered footage. And it's with the Let It Be movies that this story starts. The 1970 film Let It Be had a troubled journey through Mordor, ultimately becoming a bittersweet reflection of the band's internal struggles. Originally conceived as a television special showcasing the Beatles' return to live performance, the project quickly devolved into a tense recording session. The band, grappling with creative differences and personal tensions, clashed frequently in the studio, and when the group finally dissolved in April of 1970, the then unfinished film project acquired this new breakup angle. Director Michael Lindsay Hogg delicately captured this friction on camera, framing the lead up to the breakup and evolving into a final product far different from the joyful back-to-basics vision Paul McCartney initially envisioned. Despite the underlying tension, the film does offer gentle glimpses of the band's legendary musical chemistry. There are serene moments of genuine camaraderie, impromptu jam sessions, and cheeky flashes of their trademark humor. The film's climax, an impromptu rooftop concert on the band's Apple building in London, remains a powerful and iconic moment in rock history. However, the negativity surrounding the recording sessions overshadows these positive aspects. Upon release, critics found the film's portrayal of the Beatles to be dour and depressing, further fueling the narrative of their imminent breakup. Ironically, the film would be the band's final official release before their disbandment in 1970. In my life, there's been a growing appreciation for the rawness captured in Let It Be, but one might argue Get Back finally addressed this unfinished business, revisiting the footage and offering new perspectives for these sessions, correcting any damage made and somewhat restoring the vision the lads originally intended. This re-examination highlights the important bits: the humor, the friendship, the creative spark that still existed within the group, amidst even the turmoil.
As you recall, I produced a quaint review of They Shall Not Grow Old when that movie hit cinemas. Link up above. I always forget which side it's on. And it's worth drawing some comparison between these two Jackson ventures. On one hand, you have Get Back, a vibrant Bayeux tapestry woven from unearthed footage of the Beatles' Let It Be. On the other, They Shall Not Grow Old, a poignant resurrection of World War I soldiers brought to life through meticulous restoration and technological wizardry. It's the same dream and same approach by the same man who is completely, utterly, and unhealthily obsessed with these two subjects, the Great War and the Fab Four. Think of them as two paths winding through the woods of history. Get Back is a magical mystery tour down sun-dappled trails filled with laughter and camaraderie of the Fab Four, rediscovering their musical alchemy. It's a treasure unearthed, dusty attic boxes overflowing with forgotten gems and playful banter. I have to say, god dang, that is a mean cup of Earl. Jackson, like a seasoned archaeologist or Egyptologist, brushes away the cobwebs of time, revealing a narrative far removed from the melancholy breakup myth. It's a story whispered through laughter, where joy becomes the unexpected melody, challenging the long-held belief that these sessions were solely marked by discord and dissent. Now, They Shall Not Grow Old treads a different path, a long and winding road through shadows of hardship and youthful sacrifice. Here, Jackson acts as less an archaeologist, more a sculptor, breathing life into raw footage, giving faces vitality through color and voices to soldiers long lost. It's a poignant journey, a stark reminder of the human cost etched upon the canvas of real history. This ain't no campfire sing-along, kumbaya, all you need is love. It's a gut punch, a whisper of fallen leaves carrying the casualty and causality of war. While both films showcase Jackson's mastery of storytelling and his dedication to bridging the gap between past and present, their tones diverge as dramatically as the landscapes they navigate. Get Back is a warm seaside breeze with a hint of coal smoke and cigarette smoke, a celebration of artistic renewal, while They Shall Not Grow Old is a dig through the cold trench, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of adversity. It is because of his work on Grow Old that Jackson was chosen to carry that weight on the Get Back project. A few critics fretted about Grow Old's manipulated footage, particularly the jarring 3D version. Despite these concerns, most historians were quite dazzled by the film's visual spectacle, and in case of both IPs, very recent technology breakthroughs played crucial roles in production. The goal of that technology is for you to realize that the technology is there. Yatsit, 1 second. The goal of that technology in both of those projects is the same. It's for you to realize that it's not there. Jackson's Get Back boasts stunningly sharp and vivid visuals, a feat absent from the original footage due to its age and format. Jackson utilizes custom software developed by his team to achieve a level of verisimilitude that makes the historical footage almost feel like a time capsule. This highlights how restoring and revitalizing media from the past increasingly relies on a blend of traditional restoration techniques, visual effects, and cutting-edge computer programming. We devised a technology that is called demixing, said Jackson. You teach the computer what a guitar sounds like. You teach them what a drum sounds like, what a human voice sounds like. You teach them what a bass sounds like. Let's just pause to appreciate my absolute absurd and terrible Kiwi accent. Supplied with enough sonic data, the system functioned like a superpowered human ear, eventually learning to distinguish between the intricate soundscapes of the recording sessions. Not just the instruments either, each Beatles voice, with their own unique timbres and inflections, became identifiable to the AI. Get Back not only presents revelatory musical moments, but also allows us to eavesdrop on once private conversations between the Fab Four. as if a veil has been lifted, offering unprecedented insight into the band's creative process, camaraderie, and even the occasional tension that simmered beneath the surface. Do a shot every time I say the camaraderie. The word camaraderie. I dare you. Is that? In regards to Disney might be considered a startling choice for this project. We may view the Beatles today with a wholesome sense of innocence, but yesterday, they were proper rock and rollers, drinking like fish, smoking like chimneys, and cursing like sailors off the Liverpool docks. Disney made some surprising and atypical compromisations in distributing the Beatles' Get Back. The studio famous for The Lion King, The Sword in the Stone, and Mickey Mouse Clubhouse allowed permission for the inclusion of profanity, a landmark first for the platform, not just asses and damns either. This decision acknowledged the authentic language used by the Beatles during the period, while adhering to viewer discretion through episodic warnings. Said Jackson to the Radio Times, "We've had to have a discussion with Disney about the swearing. The Beatles are scarce boys, and they freely swear, but not in an aggressive or sexual way." That's by QE, and that's as good as it gets. Sticking to it. We got Disney to agree to have swearing, which I think is the first time for a Disney Channel. That makes him feel modern too. I have literal footage of him saying that. I did not need to do that. Swearing wasn't the only concern for the House of Mouse. As I mentioned, the lads chain-smoked enough to startle the Surgeon General's long dead, even. Hence the final shocking rating of, gasp, PG-13. Jackson whips up a vibrant, intimate day in the life, where John, Paul, George, and Ringo and friends jam, banter, and rediscover their musical mojo. But before we dive into the name brand tea leaves, let's brew some audience reactions courtesy of Metacritic. They're not paying me to do this. Imagine a virtual tea party with the Beatles fans worldwide. The verdict, a resounding fab 4 stars out of 4. TV Jerry says, "There are extraordinary moments where we watch them, primarily Paul, create new songs right in front of us, providing a remarkable insight into their creative process. For fans, this is an exciting, unique opportunity to have one last look at the most influential rock band of all time." Carl Elmore says, "This was probably the greatest thing that a Beatles fan could ever receive." Poor64 says, "Peter Jackson did a good job with Get Back. I hate that evil Disney being a part of this." Okay, we're just gonna cut him off right there. Okay. Now, the critics chimed in too, offering a delightful blend of sweet and tart. Variety's Chris Willman, "We've seen our share of rock documentaries that brilliantly captured an artist at a singular moment in time, but a film project that lets us look in at leisurely length on the creative process as well as personalities of genius superstars who really are just like us. In 60 years worth of pop music movies, that's something we've never really gotten." Musicenthusiast.net said, "It could have been a couple hours shorter and not suffered for it in the least. But that said, I did enjoy it quite a bit." More to anyone? I'm getting some. Here we go. Finally, Rolling Stone called Get Back a documentary about the Beatles. I didn't have a subscription to that magazine, so I could not pass the second sentence. It's not wrong. Now, some people did not enjoy the Beatles documentary at all. Okay, I don't care. Moving on, no attention to you. So, is Get Back a cozy cup of tea or a bitch of brew? It's a delightful paradox, dear stranger. It's warm and intimate like shared laughter, invigorating like a fresh pot of breakfast blend, yet sharp and complex like perfectly steeped Darjeeling. Whether you're a diehard fan or simply curious about the creative process, you ought to grab your metaphorical teacup and dip in. You might just find yourself humming along, tapping your toes. and rediscovering the magic of these musical legends. Remember, there's no wrong way to savor this experience. Take it slow, sip by sip, and let the music, the friendship, and the joy of creation wash over you. Anyone thinking this is going to be a whitewash, think again, Jackson told The Guardian. I didn't want to hold back or sanitize anything, but there was a very positive reaction from everyone, even if some of them said parts of it was stressful to watch. I've been the professor. Come together and get back to my neck of the woods. How many is that? That's all? I'm the walrus.